All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
And welcome to the X Zone, everyone. My name is Rob McConnell, and for the next 4 hours, I'm your host and your guide as together we cross the time-space continuum to this place that I call the X Zone. It's a place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard. It's a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. And the X Zone comes to you Monday through Friday from 10 p.m. Eastern until 2 a.m. Eastern on the X Zone Broadcast Network and our growing family of broadcast affiliates right around the world. If you'd like to send us an email, xzone@xzoneradiotv.com, on all social media sites, X Zone Radio TV, and our website, www.xzoneradiotv.com. X Zone Nation, my guest this hour is the author of Push Back, and it's a Reclaiming Our American Judeo-Christian Ethos. And my guest is the Rabbi Areyh Spero. He's the author, as I said, and his articles have appeared in the Wall Street Journal, the Washington Times, National Review, Human Events, and newspapers across the country. He has been interviewed on Fox News, on Stuart Varney, Glenn Beck's TV program, and on radio by Laura Ingraham. And that's just a partial list of the many, many media credentials that the Rabbi has. And we're going to be talking to the Rabbi this hour about his new book entitled Push Back, Reclaiming Our American Judeo-Christian Ethos. And Rabbi, welcome to the show, sir.
Oh, thank you very much, Rob.
Rabbi, tell us, these are crazy times in this world of ours. We have what's going on in Syria. We have what's going on in Iran and Iraq. We have those children that were kidnapped, and everybody seems to have forgotten about them in Africa. We have the disappearance of Flight 370 over 121 days ago. We have tensions like we've never seen. What's going on in the Ukraine? Let's see. There's trouble brewing apparently between China and other Asian states. How do we push back, Rabbi, with all this going on?
Well, a lot of it, if we just would next time around elect a more serious and experienced president, I think we wouldn't feel as vulnerable as we do. There's always going to be chaos in the world, but this is chaos on a scale that people are becoming frightened. And when you add to that our own problem with the border on the south,
oh my gosh,
people feel that we have no protection. Anybody can just walk across. Right now, it's people that are walking across to spend the rest of their life getting freebies from the United States government or the United States taxpayer, but it can soon be jihadists that come across to actually take our lives and kill us. So there are always problems in the world, but I think we feel rudderless. We don't have a leader. Either some people feel he's incompetent, some people feel that he's just has a whole different view of the way life should be. And that's what makes it so actually scary. I would like to venture that even in World War II, as difficult as that was, people felt with Roosevelt at the helm and everything that we had, that it would eventually all work out, and we were the United States. I don't know if that feeling prevails today.
Tell me, Rabbi, when we look back in history, for example, Richard Nixon, when he was impeached, Bill Clinton was impeached. How come President Obama has not been impeached when we look at the history of what has gone on in the country, as you discussed, the immigration, people coming over? We have the two terrorists that were during the Boston Marathon. The KGB told the American government, "Hey, these guys were problems." It was ignored. We have now 2 people in Texas who are arrested for joining ISIS online. How come President Obama hasn't been held accountable? And then with the last prisoner exchange, 1 soldier for the release of 5 terrorists. It was against the law.
Well, yeah, sure. Now, listen, there's 2 reasons, I think. The media is not letting the American people know this. If you read the New York Times and you read some of the major newspapers, Washington Post, Los Angeles Times, and these are the newspapers from which other newspapers get their information.
Right.
And this also where the television and the radio, well, not radio so much, but television certainly, the mainstream media gets its okay. It's not just the information, but it's go-ahead from the New York Times, etc. They're not communicating these stories. It's almost as if they are in collusion with the Obama administration. They're not talking about the all these emails that all of a sudden were lost and the hard drives that were lost. They're not talking about Benghazi the way they should. The terrible...
Rabbi, I hate to do this.
Rabbi,
we've got to take a commercial break. We'll be back in 2 minutes. X-Zone Nation. Rabbi Areyh Spero is our special guest. We're talking to the good rabbi about his book this hour, Pushback. 2 websites, pushbackamerica.com. X-Zone Nation, Rabbi Areyh Spero is my special guest this hour. He's the author of Pushback, Reclaiming Our American Judo-Christian Ethos. His website, there's 2 of them actually, www.pushbackamerica.com. And for all his articles, caucusforamerica.com. Rabbi, it's a pleasure and an honor having you on the show tonight, sir. Before we went to the break, we were talking about President Obama. We were talking about some of the events that are happening in the world today. Why is the present political situation in Washington not being slammed dunk as other administrations have been slam dunk in the past? And I'm looking at Clinton's administration. I'm looking at the Nixon administration. What's going on?
Well, when it came to the Nixon administration, you had a media that they hated Richard Nixon. The New York and Washington media hated him. I can tell you from New York because I used to be in Manhattan. I was a rabbi in Manhattan, and they were after Nixon already from the 50s, after the Alger Hiss situation, the trial there, and they wanted to dethrone him. They waited 20 years for that. As far as Clinton, the reason that the media couldn't hold that down is because it was all so salacious. You know, the problem with Obama now, the malfeasance or the betrayal is not sending men to help those heroes in Benghazi who were trying to defend the embassy. He could have. And then the cover-up, blaming it on a video as opposed to the real truth that it was a 9/11 sponsored terrorist attack that we should have known about, and some of the people in the State Department did anticipate. These are not salacious things. Clinton was very salacious at sex, so even the media couldn't dampen that. But right now, if the American people would know what's going on, they would be up in arms, but the media is not letting them know because the media wants a Democrat president. Especially Obama, a lot of them are invested in Obama's success, and that's one reason. And quite often, when the American people make a judgment, they have the media make the judgment for them. In other words, when the media says that this is reprehensible, then the American public says, oh, yes, that's reprehensible. So they were told that Watergate was reprehensible. They're not being told, the American people, by the media, that what Obama is doing, his cover-up with Benghazi, or all the tapes and all the hard drives that were suddenly lost regarding the IRS, the media is not telling the American people that this is reprehensible and they should be outraged. Then there's one other point, and this is the biggest point. Why aren't the Republicans doing anything? And that is because they don't want to be the first of a group to impeach the first black president. They're just not going to do it. They would be stained with this forever and ever. And even people who might agree with them, who really wants to do that and say, I participated in the stone throwing and the impeachment of the first black president. My goodness, they would say that, you see, America's deeply racist. They elected him, but they just couldn't stomach having a black president. They impeached him. So I don't think the Republicans are going to do it.
You know, I always thought, sir, that it was for the people, by the people, not for the, for the government, by the media.
Yes, sir, this is the way it's supposed to be. We're in a period right now where what we have is a ruling class, an elitist ruling class, that wants to decide the destiny of America. No longer should that be decided by people in Iowa and Ohio and Nevada. This ruling class really feels they're a political aristocracy that should determine for the people. They know best. The ruling class includes many of the politicians on the left, and it includes the media, because the media also feel that they're somehow anointed. They know what is best for America. So although the founding fathers wanted this to be a country where the people on the local level decided their destiny, over the last 20, 30 years, we've developed a partnership between the media and left-wing ruling class that says, no, we'll decide the fate.
It seems that what the founding fathers wanted is fought against until it best serves the party in power. For example, I don't think the founding fathers, when it came to the right to bear arms, were talking about AK-47 automatic assault rifles and armor-piercing shells.
No, I think what they wanted was that people have the right to defend themselves in their home. That was very important to them, because you had the British soldiers that entered these people's homes just willy-nilly, and they wanted to guarantee that people could defend themselves. And also militias. They did believe in militias, because sometimes if there was a problem, I guess militias took the place of like a police force. If there'd be a problem and the government can't come right away, and yet there's a danger, so you have a state militia or a local militia. I think that's what they wanted. As far as all these gangster-type machine guns, I don't know that they wanted that.
You know, look at all the violence we're seeing in schools these days. It seems that nowhere is anyone safe in America. And yet you have America going out everywhere saying that we're the police, we're here to police the world and keep peace around the world, and they can't keep peace within their own country.
Well, we are safer than most people think. This is a big country now. There are about 325 million people, and you're going to have a certain percentage of crazies. And I don't know if the percentage of crazies has enlarged, but there are certainly more crazies because there are more people. You know, when I grew up, I think we talked about a population of 120 million. We're now at about 320 million. That's more than double in my own lifetime. And so there are a lot more crazies out there, and there's a lot more availability and access to these things. But I don't know if we're such a wild society. I have to tell you personally, although that does bother me, I myself have never encountered the wildness that people think is emblematic of America. It's been a pretty consistent, predictable life, and you just got to be careful. The only place where it is a problem is in the schools. This is just devastating because the school is not where you think, and that's something that we have to address.
Looking at the big picture, do you believe that the war on terrorism is as quelled as the government would like us to think it is?
No, we have big problems, and I think that at least here, there's overseas, we're never going to be able to stop all this terrorism because a lot of it is Sunnis against Shiites and Shiites against Sunnis and Iran against Iraq. The stuff has been going on for so long, it's so complicated, and the barbarism is just beyond belief. What we have to do, though, is to protect America, which we can do if we would take care of our borders, and if the President Obama, would allow law enforcement to, they call it profile, that's fine. If he would allow law enforcement to profile who we think are the most likely people to perpetuate terrorism, I think that we could stop a lot of it. And the demographics, the most likely is a young Muslim male from overseas steeped in all of this Islamicism. And that was the exact case up there in Boston.
Yeah.
These guys should never have been allowed to get as far as they did. But the Obama administration has handicapped. They've tied the hands of law enforcement, if it's local police or FBI, saying you can't profile. So when all this information comes from Russia and from all of these places that basically say, these are the guys, go after them before they do what they do, they're not allowed to because that's profiling.
Do you think that America is too politically correct?
Oh my goodness, it's ridiculous. We're more concerned about what the sensitivity and the honor of Islam than we are about saving the lives of our own people. You have the first moral job of government or anybody who's in a position of responsibility is to save the lives, the safety, the health of the people who they have been entrusted to protect. And that's more important than worrying about, well, this Muslim group thinks, well, maybe we're not sensitive enough, we're not giving them the honor. That stuff pales in comparison to the need to protect innocent people. Look what happened at Fort Hood. Look what happened with the Times Square bomber, the Christmas Day bomber. Look what's happened in Boston. This is so many cases, Seattle. And all of these could have been averted. There were signs with this fella, Nidal, Fort Hood. There were signs that he was on the wrong track. He was reading the wrong material. He was speaking too much about jihad and things. They should have stopped him, but they didn't because political correctness. So what happens? They chose political correctness over the lives of these 13 people and 40 other people that were wounded. This is a complete perversion of priorities and responsibility. It's immoral.
You would have thought that with the events of September the 11th, that lessons would have been learned. Safety factors would have been implemented. The law enforcement community given the ability to do their job. But what I see is, 9/11 happened. We lost a lot of people. But we're too politically correct to do anything about it. How do we change all that, Rabbi?
You have to have the guts. You have to value your life more than you value political correctness. The NYPD, the New York Police Department, they know exactly what to do. Exactly what to do. They've been handcuffed by the political correctness, and a lot of this goes to the Oval Office. It's President Obama. President Obama, he wrote this in a book before he was president, way back in one of his biographies. He has 2 books, and he said that if ever he would be elected president and the winds were against Islam, he would be there to protect Islam. So he has chosen Islam, the sensitivity, the honor, whatever it is. He's chosen that over his first responsibility, which is to the American people. This is a gentleman who said that the purpose of NASA is to reach out to Islam, to Muslims, to make them feel good. That's not the purpose of NASA. NASA was to do outreach, to reach out to the galaxies, the cosmos.
That's right.
Now, he has a soft spot for Islam because he was raised there that way, his family, his madrasas, fine. But as President of the United States, you take a vow to protect the people. That's the first job. And we've had a lot of problems during his tenure. All these things that we mentioned before, these bombers, and that's because his priority, he seems to be more concerned about guarding and safeguarding the name, the reputation of Islam, more than protecting the American people. So we've got a problem on our hands.
All right, Rabbi, please stand by, sir. You and I have to take our news break at the bottom of the hour. Exonation, Rabbi Areyh Spero is my very special guest. He's the author of Pushback, Reclaiming Our American Judeo-Christian Ethos. And when we come back, I will give you the websites and how you can get a copy of this book by our very distinguished guest this hour. Once again, the Rabbi Areyh Spero. Stand by, Rabbi. We'll be back on the other side of this news break. Exonation, don't go away. Now you can dial in to listen to the X Zone Radio Show from anywhere in the world with Rob McConnell 24/7, 365 by dialing 213-401-0080. That's 213-401-0080. If you have a mobile phone or landline, the X Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell is now at your beck and call at 213-401-0080. That's 213-401-0080, 24/7, 365.
This is the X Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
Exonation Rabbi Areyh Spero is our special guest. He's the author of Pushback, Reclaiming Our American Judeo-Ethos. It is available here, the two websites, pushbackamerica.com, and for all the Rabbi's articles, www.caucusforamerica.com. First of all, Rabbi, thanks for joining us tonight. It's a crazy world. We are looking at injustices. We're looking at countries that are bending backwards, in my opinion, to meet the cries of the politically how can I best phrase this? Those who come in under the granting of immigration, and I'm not talking about the southern border here, sir. They come to America. They are treated as an American, and yet we seem to be at war with these countries going back to the other side, and I don't understand it at all. Like, how can you have the best... In my opinion, the immigration laws are a joke. You know, you've got what's going on in the southern border. You've got all these people who are coming into America from other countries, countries that should be a concern to governments, but it seems that for some reason or another, they just don't get the scrutiny that they should. I find this very alarming. I find that the problem...
Well, that's purposeful. It should be alarmed. All of these things, immigration, protecting the borders, they're first and foremost the obligation and responsibility of the executive branch of the president. And the president has been here now for 6 years. He hasn't done a thing to really secure the border. It's more than a sieve. You talk to people from Texas and Arizona and New Mexico, and they're just miles and miles of unfenced, unwalled areas where you can just walk across. And he says he's going to secure it, but he says that, but he knows that he's not going to. This is part of Obama's desire to transform America, to change America. The way you do it, he keeps bringing in, he allows all of these immigrants to come in. He knows that they're going to vote for the Democrat Party because that's the party that's going to give them all the freebies that they're coming for. And that's how you transform America. You nullify the votes of many hardworking people by bringing in thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of people that are going to vote for those programs, for the people that will give them, the liberals who will give them these programs. And that's how you take a country away from the people, a country that was built on the idea of accountability, personal responsibility, hard work, and you take it away from them because you've brought in a demographic that's coming specifically to be catered to and through our work. The problem with political correctness is that for so long, this country, I don't know, because they feel guilty, ashamed, for whatever reason, we just look at one thing. How will people look at us? Did we treat this minority group right? Did we treat that minority group right? And we forget that we also have responsibilities to our own families, to our safety, to our protection. And I think that's, when I talk about the ethos, we've got to return to an ethos of confidence where we value our life. For example, all these people coming across the border, how many of them are coming with terrible diseases? We're reading about terrible diseases in the old days when people came to America. They had to first pass a whole battery of tests. They couldn't. My goodness, if they had psoriasis, I don't even know if they could come in. But certainly, if they had communicable diseases, they couldn't get onto off of Ellis Island. Back they went to Europe, and here we have people coming in with diphtheria and with measles and all types of new strains of chickenpox and things where our antibiotics can't work, and nobody is concerned because they're so afraid of being considered somehow, racist or anti-Mexican or anti-Hispanic, that they're okay with this. And even though it can jeopardize the lives of their own children, their own safety, we've been brainwashed by the New York Times crowd for the last 50, 60 years that somehow we're a bad people. And we've got to show penitence. We have to do recompense for all of our sins. And so we take this, even though it's detrimental to our own safety.
You know, Rabbi, when I was a young boy here in Canada, you'd go to school, the first class, the first thing you did was you did the Lord's Prayer. And I went to Protestant schools, and you did scriptures. The very first lesson of the day was the scriptures. And I honestly believe, Rabbi, that by taking religion out of the schools to appease those who seem to be able to push the government and influence them with their biases, that because it's the Bible, because it's a prayer, because it doesn't suit their own religious philosophies, that it's against their rights. Well, you know what? I've got a very simple solution to this, Rabbi. If you don't like the way the countries are when you land, take the next plane back home.
Absolutely. When you have people coming to these countries, United States or Canada, and they're trying to live under Sharia law, then listen, you want Sharia law? There's Pakistan and there's all these countries. Go to Iraq, Iran, you'll get all the Sharia law. You come here to live with our freedom and with our protection and our wonderful, blessed life, well, then you accept the way we live. If you want Sharia law, you can have that back in the Middle East countries. It's interesting. These people, they don't put two and two together. One of the reasons they escape these countries is precisely because these countries are under a different ethos, a Sharia ethos, as opposed to our Judeo-Christian ethos. And I think even Americans and Canadians don't realize. They just happen to think that it's somehow this absolute given that the United States and Canada are always going to be fair and equitable, land of opportunities, and it doesn't really make a difference what the ethos is. It's somehow like manna from heaven. It's not. It's because we have a specific ethos, the Judeo-Christian.
Yeah.
Remove that, discard that, and it becomes a different country. And and in the name of inclusiveness and people trying to accommodate, they even accommodate this notion that, well, okay, let this community live under Sharia law. No. We have constitutions. This is how we live. There are hundreds, centuries, hundreds of years that have gone into building up our laws and the way we do things. And we shouldn't discard that. It's a lack of pride on our part.
It seems that we haven't learned from what's going on in Europe, what's happening in the United Kingdom, what's happening in Spain, what's happening in Sweden, with the influx of immigrants that are basically taking over the country, taking over the laws, forcing laws to be changed. And
absolutely, but the reason that we haven't learned is the average person doesn't know, because the media is not telling them. The media doesn't want us to know what's happening in Europe, because if we do know, then we'll become more conservative. We'll become more patriotic. We'll turn to nationalism. We'll see the importance of the Judeo-Christian ethos. The media doesn't want that. They have a whole different agenda. They want to transform America. They would like to make it like socialist, a little bit Marxist, where there'd be a ruling class and a dependency class like in the third world. So they don't want us to know all this. They're into this mantra that everybody's the same, and if we just appease them, everybody will be nice and there'll be peace in the world. That's not true. There are different ideologies. Absolutely, and these ideologies draw different conclusions.
Yeah. You know, I'm sorry, sir.
The elites do know what's going on. Believe me, the rulers do. And I think if you're on the left You want this to happen because a leftist leader knows he'll never be elected by those of us who are conservative, patriotic, nationalistic, those of us that are on what's called the right. We're not going to vote for leftist leaders. The only way for leftist leaders to be elected is to have enough people who come in who really do not identify with the nationality. They want a different set of laws. They're going to vote for leftist leaders. And so leftist leaders do know what's going on, and they're okay with it. They want that because the native patriotic citizen is not going to vote for them. So they want to change the populations. They want to change the ethos because that's how they will get elected. That's where their power comes from.
You know, I watch the news and I hear the figures of the unemployment. You hear all the financial figures, and that's where it stops. And you know, Rabbi, you are so correct about the media. You are so correct, sir. At times I'm ashamed to be part of the media. However, I think that it's time that the eyes of the population are opened up and that they know what's going on. There has to be a way that we can get what's going on out to the masses. You know, people don't seem to realize that the economy is going to crap in a hurry because everything is being made and manufactured offshore. Look at China.
Now,
I'm sorry.
People do realize that it's a problem. Let me tell you, though, how this all started. I think you do know, of course. This started in the United States big time, really, really, really big time, back in the Clinton era, and this is why. In order to get elected, many of the people on the left decided that they would give people freebies. We give you programs for everything, then you vote for us. If that's the deal. We'll give you cell phones, we'll give you food, we give you housing, we give you underwear, we give you shirts, we give you clothes, anything you want. We'll give you, and of course the country will have to accept it because we'll do it all in the name of compassion, intolerance, inclusiveness, the whole thing. And who's against compassion, you know? But we'll give it to you. You have to vote for us. Now, what happened was the government had to borrow a lot of money in order to do this. These programs cost a lot of money.
Sure.
And you can't keep taxing the people to death because if you tax them too much, then the middle class won't vote for you. So what do? Instead of taxing people to death, you borrow the money. Who do you borrow it from? You got to sell bonds. The Chinese will buy your bonds. But the Chinese say, why should we buy your bonds? I mean, we can go somewhere else. This is the deal. We will give you these manufacturing jobs. That's what America did. We'll send over all these manufacturing jobs to you, China. You'll make a lot of money because you'll have all these jobs now, all this manufacturing. And with the money that you get, because we're going to buy your products that you produce there, with that money you buy our bonds, and we're able to finance all of this debt so that people will vote for us. And that's how it all started.
If China was to call in all its markers, the U.S. would be bankrupt.
Right. Yeah, we'd be in a lot of trouble.
Yeah. So once again, Rabbi, why is it so hard for the average Joe to see what's going on right in front of them? Is it because they're like it's the ostrich syndrome? They'd rather put their head in the sand than to look up, face reality, and have to take action? It's for the people, by the people.
Well, listen, you just made a very good point. Why don't people want to admit what's happening with Islam all over Europe? Mm-hmm. Don't they see that what's happening in the Middle East, now it's starting to happen in Europe, and it could happen here in the United States and Canada? Because if they admit it, they have to stand up and do something people don't have the stomach to stand up and do. Number one, some of them are afraid. They're afraid they'll be beat up, who knows? And others don't want to be involved in controversy. So instead of knowing about it, they deny it. And then they actually accuse the people who bring the message as being provocative and being acrimonious. Don't tell us this, you're just causing trouble, because people don't want to stand up. That's number one. But listen, I have to tell you, Rob, a lot of people don't know what's going on. You and I do. This is our business. A lot of people don't know that they eat pizza, go to bowling alleys, they rely on the media, and the media is not telling them. Also, in order for people to get angry about something, it has to be framed by the media in a certain way that gives the people permission to be angry. And thus far, even when the media does tell them something, it's just a fact here, a fact there, but they don't tell it in such a way that the people will actually get angry about the injustice of all of it.
Well, they should be angry. They should do something about it. You know, this is what great countries do. They react to injustices. Here, just take this. This just came across our news desk, and our news director sent it over to me because he's listening to our interview. Records of dead the records of dead veterans were changed. What the hell's going on with the Veterans Administration? We send these people who volunteer to protect democracy to all these different theaters around the world. They give 150%. They come back, they need help, and they get butkus.
Well, I like that. They do get bupkis. I like that expression. Bupkis that's a Yiddish expression, actually. It means they get nothing, but that's a Yiddish expression.
You see, I was raised in I was raised in the Park Extension area of Montreal, so.
I lived in Montreal. I lived off of Van Horn, and Côte-Neige and Outremont. So just getting back to what we were talking about, but the problem that we have is in the United States, we have a president that doesn't really deeply care about us as people. If he did, he'd be looking into the Veterans Administration. Sure. After all, he ran on that. But he ran on it simply not because he felt good about doing something for it, but because it politically could expedite his ascendancy to the throne. But when it came time to do something, he was off playing golf, or he doesn't really care. He doesn't. This is the problem with President Obama. You don't get the sense that he really cares deeply about the individual American as an American. He cares about certain ideology. He wants gay marriage, or he wants us to all feel good about Islam and to jeopardize our own safety in order to appeal to Islam's sensitivity.
Rabbi, I have to take my final break. Please stand by. Exonation, I'll be back on the other side of this break with Rabbi Spero as we continue here in the X-Zone from Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Exonation, our guest this hour is Rabbi Areyh Spero, and he's the author of Pushback. Here's two websites, www.pushbackamerica.com, and all his articles are at caucusforamerica.com. During the commercial break, Rabbi, you and I were talking, and here in Hamilton, we used to have on the side of the mountain a sign that said Merry Christmas during the Christmas holidays. That had to be changed to Season's Greetings. Well, you know what? On this show, when it comes to Christmas, sir, I don't say Season's Greetings. I say Merry Christmas. At Easter time, I don't say Happy Spring Holiday. I say Happy Easter. It's gone way too far. How do we claim back our rights? How do we claim back our religion? How do we claim back our political views? How do we claim back our countries?
By claiming it, by demanding it. By getting out in the streets. First of all, people should say Merry Christmas. That's what it is. It's not a season. There's no such thing as a season. Mm-hmm. It's a day called Christmas. And all of the everything in December, from Thanksgiving until Christmas, it all revolves around not winter, it revolves around Christmas. So first of all, people have to say Merry Christmas. They have to say Happy Easter. They shouldn't be so politically correct or so afraid, so timid. My God, the society is going to be destroyed, our civilization, because of timidity. A civilization lasts and has longevity because the people believe in it. So you have to say it. And you've got to say it in public. And then you've got to demand when you see a store that all of a sudden that takes away Christmas signs and puts in season greetings, you go to them and say, I'm not going to buy my gifts here because I'm buying it for Christmas. I'm not buying it for winter. So we have to have that confidence. That's why I wrote Pushback, because people need to push back. Otherwise, incrementally, step by step, everything is going to be taken. Yeah. Because there is a left-wing cabal, it includes the media, the ruling class, the leftists, that want to take this from us. And this is our heritage. It's our way of life. It's what we love. And if we want to retain it, we have to fight for it. We haven't had to fight for the last 50, 60 years. It's somehow on autopilot. Mm-hmm. Now we have to fight because there are people that want to take it away. And we have to know that. There are people that hate... Yes, go on.
I was just going to say, is it going to take another act of civil insurrection in order to get the message across? Are we going to have to do what they did in Egypt Are we going to have to do what they've done in other countries to show the government that we're not going to take it anymore?
It's not the government; it's the people that run the government. Government per se is something neutral. It's the people who run the government that are the problems. You can have I'm sure if you had a Ronald Reagan, a Mitt Romney, a Harper, and all these fellas, and they ran their governments, it'd be a good government. So it's not government that's the problem, because Thomas Jefferson, George Washington, they ran the government here in America. It's the people who are populating and using the government for their own aggrandizement, for their own power, for their own feeling that they're better than us. They're the new aristocracy. And they'll make all the decisions for us. That is what those particular people. But sure, look, you've seen the left is always successful on every one of their issues because they go into the street, they're visible, they protest, they shout. You hear them, you see them. Legislatures see them. I love going to church and the synagogue and all of these things, but that's not going to win it for us. Prayer alone is not enough. We have to go into the streets. We have to be heard, and we've got to be angry. We should have some righteous anger. When someone is taking your heritage, taking it from you and your children, you should have righteous anger. And people respond when they see anger on someone's. How come Islam is always successful? Because they show anger, then people get afraid. Well, maybe if people looked at us and saw some righteous anger, because it's anger that we're entitled to this anger. They're stealing our heritage. Maybe then they'd step back and say, hey, we have gone too far.
Rabbi, we've got to say so long for tonight. Once again, I want to thank you so much for joining us. Continued success, sir, and I welcome the opportunity of having you back on the show anytime.
Thank you, Rob. Thanks very much.
Good night, sir. X-Zone Nation, for more information, visit www. You got your pencils ready? pushbackamerica.com and caucusforamerica.com. We'll be back on the other side of this break. Don't go away.